How the world reacted to Trump outburst at Zelensky. Donald Trump's tirade against Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky triggered debate on the future of U.S. foreign policy and international support for Ukraine, resulting in a range of reactions from condemnation in Ukraine to conflicting reactions in the U.S. and worries about world unity. In this video, we will go through 7 key points detailing how the world reacted to his remarks. Number 7. Shock and disbelief. Donald Trump's tirade against Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sparked an immediate and largely shocked worldwide response. Since the beginning of the Russian invasion, Zelensky had gained enormous respect from world leaders, the media, and regular people alike as a symbol of valor and tenacity. He had become a pivotal figure in the defense of democratic norms because of his ability to bring the globe together against Russian aggression and his appeals for international support. Trump's public criticism of him was therefore greeted with bewilderment and incredulity. Trump's tirade appeared to be out of step with the general consensus among world leaders, who understood how critical it was to support Zelensky and Ukraine in the face of an existential threat. The former president's comments were viewed as a strange departure from the United States' customary diplomatic approach, in addition to being personally offensive to a leader who was struggling for his nation's existence. Many believed it was unimaginable that a former U.S. president would openly attack Zelensky, given the gravity of the situation and his leadership in it, particularly at a time when international solidarity was vital to Ukraine's defense. Number 6. Condemnation from Ukrainian officials. In response to Trump's tirade, Ukrainian authorities expressed a great deal of displeasure and annoyance. Throughout the conflict, President Zelensky personally developed close ties with Western politicians, especially those in the United States, in an effort to secure material and moral support for Ukraine's defense against Russia. Concern was quickly voiced by Ukrainian politicians and diplomats, some of whom openly criticized Trump for undermining not just Zelensky, but also the larger Ukrainian cause for sovereignty. Many Ukrainian officials were concerned that such remarks may erode foreign assistance, both materially and diplomatically. They saw the comments as detrimental to the morale of Ukrainian military personnel and civilians, who were engaged in an existential conflict with a far more powerful enemy. Given the seriousness of the situation, some Ukrainian politicians also noted that public criticism from influential people like Trump would strengthen Russia's claim that the West is split and less dedicated to Ukraine's cause. Since Ukraine's ability to maintain its defense depends on international unity and military support, there was real concern that such outbursts might cause rifts in the alliance of countries backing the nation. Number 5. U.S. political reactions. Trump's outburst caused a deep rift in the United States, reflecting the broader political polarization that has characterized American politics in recent years. His supporters, mostly members of the Republican Party, were largely unfazed or even supportive of his remarks. For many Trump supporters, his criticism of Zelensky was part of his larger rhetoric about reducing U.S. foreign involvement, especially in conflicts that did not directly affect American interests. Trump's supporters contended that his skepticism about U.S. foreign aid and intervention was part of a larger effort to prioritize domestic issues over international entanglements, and that his stance reflected a more practical approach to international affairs, as opposed to what they perceived as the traditional interventionist policies of previous administrations. However, Trump's detractors, particularly among Democrats and some anti-Trump Republicans, saw the outburst as detrimental to U.S. foreign policy, particularly in light of the ongoing war in Ukraine, and claimed that publicly undermining Zelensky was reckless and could harm Ukraine's ability to mobilize international support. They saw Trump's remarks as more evidence of his disrespect for democratic values and alliances, and the sharp ideological differences over America's place in the world, and the importance of supporting democratic allies abroad versus national interests. Number 4. Global support for Ukraine. Although many viewed Trump's reaction as an exception, the international community as a whole, especially Western countries, remained steadfast in their support for Zelensky and Ukraine. Nations that have been giving Ukraine significant financial and military support kept reaffirming their commitment. European leaders, notably those from NATO and the European Union, reaffirmed their support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Zelensky's leadership in the face of tremendous odds has been an inspiration to the world, according to many leaders, and removing him might splinter the solidarity that has been crucial in fending off Russian invasion thus far. International institutions responded with strong declarations that reaffirmed the need for the international community to stand together and for Ukrainian democracy to be maintained. Critics of Trump's remarks, however, were concerned that they may validate Russian propaganda that asserted the West's support for Ukraine was either phony or about to collapse, as Russia had already been trying to create divides within the West. Therefore, even though Trump's comments were inappropriate, they had no effect on the core determination of Ukraine's main partners, who strengthened their support for the nation. Number 3. Concerns over U.S. foreign policy. Foreign policy professionals and analysts expressed serious concerns about the future course of U.S. foreign policy in response to Trump's criticism of Zelenskyy. Many were worried that the outburst might be a sign of a larger change in U.S. policy under a second Trump administration, one that would aim to distance itself from international affairs, particularly in Europe. U.S. foreign policy experts cautioned that a U.S. withdrawal from its backing for Ukraine would provide a jolt to global relations and may give authoritarian governments, especially in China and Russia, the confidence to increase their power at the expense of democratic countries. It was feared that Trump's statements, together with his history of criticizing foreign aid and casting doubt on alliances like NATO, would make the United States less ready to offer Ukraine the type of leadership it needed and more insular. This brought up more general issues regarding the United States' position as a world leader and its dedication to defending democracy and national sovereignty elsewhere. For many, Trump's comments reaffirmed worries that his strategy would erode the rules-based international order and make it harder for the West to face threats from authoritarian nations. Number 2. Media criticism. Global media sources swiftly reported on Trump's remarks, emphasizing their startling content and possible consequences. Many saw the outburst as an attempt to undermine the unity that had been built in support of Ukraine, and international media criticized it as a dangerous moment in U.S. foreign relations. International newspapers like Le Monde and The Guardian, as well as news organizations like the New York Times and the Washington Post, denounced Trump for putting his political and personal grievances ahead of Europe's geopolitical stability. They presented his comments as a betrayal of Zelenskyy and the larger international initiative to aid Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. Numerous analysts noted that Trump's remarks ran the risk of strengthening Russia's narrative of divide in the West, which may make it more difficult for Ukraine to continue receiving international backing and aid. The media further highlighted how Trump's comments contradicted the bipartisan consensus in the United States about Ukraine's support, presenting his position as out of step with the current U.S. government and the global community. In addition to Trump's remarks, the criticism focused on the possible long-term effects on Ukraine's capacity to fend off Russian aggression and the diplomatic standing of the United States. Number 1. Public opinion in the U.S. Public sentiment in the U.S. was sharply split in response to Trump's tirade, which reflected the country's continued political polarization. Many of Trump's fans believed that his comments were appropriate and in line with his long-held beliefs on interventionism and foreign aid. However, his detractors saw the remarks as risky and detrimental to the United States' reputation abroad. According to polls, a sizable majority of Americans backed Ukraine and thought that the United States should keep giving it financial and military support so that it could protect itself from Russian aggression. But Trump's tirade appeared to cast doubt on that support's durability. Trump's remarks were interpreted by his detractors as a warning that the United States might renounce its commitment to Ukraine if Zelenskyy were to regain power, in addition to being a personal jab at him. This disagreement brought to light the larger national discussion about the United States' place in the world, with some calling for more isolationist measures and others viewing further assistance for Ukraine as essential to upholding international security and advancing democratic ideals. This incident brought to light the continuous discussion on America's place in the world as well as the difficulties of managing international relations in a divisive political environment. If you liked our video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel.